Story 1. I moved to Maplewood Estates 3 years ago after my divorce. As a single dad with 2 kids, I needed a fresh start somewhere safe and family-friendly. The homeowners association seemed strict but fair, and the neighborhood had great schools. My kids were finally settling in after everything we'd been through. My 10-year-old daughter loves Halloween more than Christmas. She'd been planning her decorations since August, saving up her allowance to buy new stuff. My 8-year-old son isn't as into it, but he loves helping his sister. After years of apartment living where we couldn't decorate much, having our own house meant we could finally go all out. We spent weeks putting up our display. Nothing too crazy, some fake spider webs, a few skeleton figures, pumpkins on the porch, and some orange lights. The kids were so proud of their work. They dragged me outside every evening to admire what they'd done. The trouble started on October 15th. I was getting ready for work when my daughter came running inside, crying, "Daughter, Dad, someone destroyed our decorations." I rushed outside to find our skeleton torn apart, the spider webs ripped down, and our pumpkins smashed on the driveway. The orange lights were yanked out and thrown in the bushes. 3 weeks of work ruined. I figured it was probably teenagers pulling pranks. I helped the kids clean up and promised we'd rebuild everything that weekend. But when I checked our doorbell camera, I saw something that made my blood boil. At 2:47 a.m., a middle-aged woman had marched up to our porch with a baseball bat. She systematically destroyed everything while muttering to herself. I recognized her immediately. She lived 4 houses down and was known for being difficult at homeowners association meetings. I confronted her that afternoon. "Me, I have you on camera destroying my kids' Halloween decorations." "Karen, good. That satanic garbage doesn't belong in a family neighborhood." "Me, satanic? They're Halloween decorations, skeletons and pumpkins." "Karen, Halloween is devil worship. I'm protecting the children in this neighborhood from evil influences." "Me, you're talking about my children. They put those decorations up themselves." "Karen, then you should be teaching them about Jesus instead of letting them celebrate the devil's holiday." I tried to stay calm, but she was completely unreasonable. I told her I'd be reporting the vandalism to the homeowners association and possibly the police. She just laughed and walked away. The next morning, I discovered she'd struck again. This time, she'd targeted the house across the street. Their inflatable ghost was slashed and their fake tombstones were broken. When I talked to my neighbor, he said the same thing happened to him. "Neighbor, she came by yesterday afternoon demanding I take everything down. When I refused, she said I'd regret it." This went on for a week. Every morning, another house was vandalized. Karen was working her way through the entire neighborhood, destroying anything Halloween-related. She even tore down a Happy Fall banner from someone's porch because it had an orange pumpkin on it. The homeowners association president seemed reluctant to act. "HOA president, we've received complaints about overly elaborate decorations. Maybe everyone should tone it down." "Me, she's destroying private property. This isn't about decoration guidelines." HOA president, well, Halloween can be controversial. Some residents find it offensive. I realized Karen had been complaining to the board, painting herself as some moral crusader. Several board members seemed to agree with her position, even if they didn't approve of her methods. Things escalated when she targeted the house at the end of our street. The homeowner was a retired veteran who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan. He was a quiet guy who kept to himself, but he'd put up a simple display, just some pumpkins and a scarecrow he'd made himself. When Karen destroyed his decorations, she went too far. She spray-painted "Devil Worshipper" across his garage door and smashed his porch light. The veteran's wife was elderly and had heart problems. The stress of the vandalism sent her to the hospital. That's when I decided to take action. I'd been documenting everything with my doorbell camera, and I knew other neighbors were too. I collected footage from 5 different houses showing Karen's vandalism spree. The breakthrough came when the veteran's doorbell camera captured Karen in broad daylight. She'd gotten bolder, thinking no one would challenge her. The video showed her approaching his house with a crowbar, looking directly at the camera before smashing his decorations. But the real kicker was the audio. The camera picked up her voice clearly as she destroyed his carefully crafted scarecrow. "Karen, this is what happens when you bring Satan into our neighborhood. You disabled freak." She didn't know the veteran was a war hero. She didn't know his wife was in the hospital. She just saw someone she could bully and went for it. I posted the video compilation on the neighborhood Facebook page with a simple caption: "This is what's been happening to our Halloween decorations." Within hours, it had hundreds of comments and shares. People were outraged, not just about the vandalism, but about her cruel words toward the veteran. The video went viral beyond our neighborhood. Local news stations picked it up. The story spread to military support groups and veteran organizations. Karen's face was everywhere, labeled as the woman who called a war veteran a disabled freak while destroying his property. The Homeowners Association had no choice but to act. They called an emergency board meeting. "HOA President, given the evidence and the public attention, we have to take immediate action." The board voted unanimously to fine Karen $5,000 for property damage and violation of community standards. They also banned her from all Homeowners Association events, meetings, and common areas for 2 years. But the community wasn't done with her. The local veterans organization organized a Halloween decoration drive for the neighborhood. They showed up with truckloads of decorations and helped everyone rebuild their displays. The veteran's house got the biggest display of all, a full graveyard scene with fog machines and everything. Karen tried to fight the fine, claiming her religious freedom was being violated. The association's lawyer shut it down quickly, pointing out that vandalism isn't protected speech. The veteran and his wife recovered, and the community rallied around them. Someone started a fundraiser for his medical expenses that raised over $15,000. Karen's house went up for sale 2 weeks later. She couldn't handle the shame and the stares from neighbors. The "for sale" sign was the only decoration on her property. On Halloween night, our street was packed with trick-or-treaters. Kids came from all over town to see the hero veteran's house they'd heard about on the news. The veteran sat on his porch in his old military uniform, handing out full-size candy bars and telling stories to anyone who'd listen. My kids had the best Halloween ever. Their decorations were better than before, and they felt like they'd helped fight for something important. Watching them laugh and play with their friends, I knew we'd found our home in this neighborhood. Sometimes standing up to bullies takes more than just being right. Sometimes it takes a doorbell camera, a viral video, and a community that refuses to tolerate hatred dressed up as righteousness. Story 2. I've been working as a special education coordinator at Lincoln Elementary for 8 years now. I got into this field because my younger brother has autism, and I saw firsthand how important proper support is for kids with disabilities. My job involves reviewing documentation, coordinating with teachers, and making sure students get the accommodations they need. It's rewarding work, but sometimes parents try to game the system, and that's where things get complicated. Last September, a new student enrolled in our school. The mother brought in what appeared to be medical documentation claiming her son had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and processing delays. The paperwork looked official enough at first glance, complete with letterhead from a local medical practice and detailed recommendations for accommodations. The boy was immediately placed in our special education program, which meant smaller class sizes, extra time on tests, and access to specialized resources. He also qualified for free lunch and additional state funding that follows students with documented disabilities. But something felt off from day one. I've worked with hundreds of kids over the years, and you develop an instinct for recognizing different learning challenges. This boy didn't show any of the typical signs mentioned in his supposed diagnosis. He was focused, completed assignments quickly, and seemed to understand instructions perfectly fine. During our first parent conference, the mother was unusually aggressive about maintaining his accommodations. "Karen, my son needs these services, and I expect you to follow his individualized education plan exactly as written. Me, of course, we want to support him properly. I was wondering if you could provide some additional background on when these symptoms first appeared. Karen, it's all in the paperwork I gave you. I don't need to explain my child's medical history to you. Me, I understand, but sometimes it helps to have context about how symptoms present at home versus school. Karen, are you questioning his diagnosis? Because I can report you for discrimination against disabled students. The conversation ended there, but her defensive attitude raised more red flags. Most parents are eager to share details that might help their child succeed. Her reluctance to discuss specifics was strange. Over the next few weeks, I observed the boy more closely. He was performing at grade level in all subjects, showed no signs of hyperactivity, and had no trouble following multi-step directions. His teachers reported similar observations. Me, how's he doing with the extended time on tests? Teacher, honestly, he finishes everything in the normal time frame. Yesterday he completed a math quiz in 10 minutes and scored perfectly. Teacher, same here. He's actually one of my fastest readers during silent reading time. I decided to take a closer look at his medical documentation. The letterhead seemed legitimate, but when I called the medical practice listed, they had no record of treating the boy or his mother. Receptionist, I've checked our system twice. We don't have any patients with that last name. Me, the documentation is dated from 3 months ago. Could you check if there's another location? Receptionist, we only have one office, and I've been here for 5 years. I would remember this case because we rarely do educational evaluations. That's when I knew we had a problem. I contacted our school district's legal department and explained the situation. They advised me to gather more evidence before making any accusations. I reached out to the boy's previous school district to request his records. They had no documentation of any special education services or disability diagnoses. According to them, he was a typical student who performed well academically. The smoking gun came when I examined the medical documents more carefully. The formatting was slightly off compared to legitimate reports I'd seen from that practice. The signature looked suspicious, and the medical terminology wasn't quite right for a genuine evaluation. I scheduled another meeting with the mother to discuss my concerns. Me, I've been reviewing your son's progress, and I have some questions about his original diagnosis. Karen, what kind of questions? He's entitled to these services. Me, I attempted to contact his doctor for clarification, but the medical practice has no record of treating him. Karen, that's impossible. Maybe they have filing issues. Me, I also noticed some inconsistencies in the documentation format. Would you be able to provide the original evaluation report? Karen, I gave you everything I have. This is harassment, and I'm going to report you to the school board. Me, I understand this is frustrating, but we need to verify the authenticity of medical documents. It's standard procedure. Karen, my son has a disability, and you're trying to take away his rights. This is illegal. She stormed out of the meeting, but I could tell she was panicking. The next day, she called the principal demanding my removal from her son's case. Principal, what exactly are your concerns about our special education coordinator? Karen, she's questioning legitimate medical documentation and harassing our family. Principal, she's following proper protocols. If the documentation is legitimate, verification should be straightforward. Karen, this is discrimination, and I'm contacting my lawyer. But no lawyer ever called. Instead, I received a call from the medical practice's office manager. Office manager, we've been contacted by someone claiming we provided evaluation services we never performed. They're using fraudulent documents with our letterhead. Me, I suspected as much. Would you be willing to verify in writing that these documents are fake? Office manager, absolutely. We take fraud very seriously and are considering pressing charges. Armed with this evidence, I met with the principal and district officials. They agreed to confront the mother with our findings. The next meeting was intense. We presented all the evidence, the medical practices denial, the inconsistencies in formatting, and the lack of records from previous schools. Principal, we have confirmation that the medical documents you provided are fraudulent. Karen, that's ridiculous. Why would I fake my son's medical records? District official, the medical practice has verified they never evaluated your son and are considering fraud charges. Karen, this is a setup. You're all conspiring against my family. Me, your son is clearly capable and intelligent. He doesn't need these accommodations, and other children who genuinely need support are being denied resources. Karen, I want him transferred to another school immediately. District official, that won't be possible. We're required to report suspected fraud to the state education department. The aftermath was swift and severe. The state launched an investigation into the fraudulent documentation. The boy was removed from the special education program, and Karen was banned from school property pending the investigation. The district attorney's office filed charges for document fraud and theft of educational services. The estimated cost of the fraudulent services exceeded $5,000, making it a felony. During the court proceedings, it came out that Karen had researched online how to fake medical evaluations and had used a template she found on a questionable website. She'd even practiced forging the doctor's signature multiple times. The judge was not sympathetic. Judge, you've stolen resources meant for children with genuine disabilities and wasted taxpayer money on fraudulent services. Karen, I just wanted the best education for my son. Judge, your son was already receiving a quality education. Your actions have damaged his school experience and violated the trust of the educational system. She was sentenced to community service, ordered to pay restitution to the school district, and placed on probation. The boy was transferred to a different school, where he continued to perform well without any special accommodations. The case became a cautionary tale in our district. We implemented stricter verification procedures for medical documentation, and I developed training materials to help other coordinators spot potential fraud. Looking back, I'm glad I trusted my instincts. The special education program exists to help students who genuinely need support, not to give advantages to those who don't qualify. Karen's selfishness could have denied real help to kids who desperately needed it. The boy, thankfully, seemed to adjust well to his new school. From what I heard, he was thriving academically and socially without the stigma of fake disability labels. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a child is protect them from their parents' poor decisions. Story 3. I've been working retail for about 3 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. But this story takes the cake. I manage a mid-sized furniture store downtown, and we pride ourselves on good customer service, maybe sometimes too good. I started working here right after college when I couldn't find anything in my field. The pay wasn't great, but the owner was decent and the work was steady. I worked my way up from sales associate to assistant manager, then finally to store manager last year. I've dealt with difficult customers before, but nothing prepared me for what happened last month. It was a Tuesday morning, around 10 a.m. I was doing inventory in the back when I heard shouting from the front. I walked out to find our newest employee looking absolutely terrified behind the counter. Standing in front of her was this woman in her 40s, arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. Karen, I want to return this mattress immediately. It's defective. Me? I'm the manager. What seems to be the problem? Karen, this mattress is covered in stains. It's disgusting. I bought it from you people, and it came like this. I looked at the receipt she slammed down on the counter. The date showed she'd purchased a queen-size memory foam mattress 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. Our return policy clearly states 30 days, and that's pushing it for hygiene reasons. Me, ma'am, I see you purchased this mattress 6 weeks ago. Our return policy is 30 days for mattresses, and only if they're in original condition. Karen, I don't care about your stupid policy. This mattress was defective when I bought it. Look at these stains. She had photos on her phone that she shoved in my face. The mattress was indeed covered in stains brown, yellow, and some I didn't want to identify. It looked like it had been used heavily for weeks. I understand your frustration, but these appear to be used stains. Our mattresses are delivered in protective plastic, and we inspect them before delivery. Karen, are you calling me a liar? I'm a paying customer. I demand a full refund right now. I'm not calling you anything, ma'am. But I can't process a return on a used mattress after 6 weeks. It's a health code violation. Karen, I want to speak to the owner. You're just some minimum wage worker who doesn't know anything. Actually, I make decent money and have full authority over returns, but I wasn't about to explain my entire employment situation to this woman. I am the store manager, and I have full authority here. The owner backs our return policy completely. Karen, this is ridiculous. I'm calling the Better Business Bureau. I'm posting on social media. You'll be sorry. That's your right, ma'am. But I still can't process this return. She stormed out, screaming about how we'd be hearing from her lawyer. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, I heard a loud crash outside. I looked through the window and saw a delivery truck backing away from our storefront. Karen was standing next to a mattress that had been dumped right in front of our main entrance. Karen, since you won't take your defective mattress back, you can deal with it yourself. I ran outside as she was getting back into the truck. Ma'am, you can't just dump this here. This is illegal dumping. Karen, sue me. It's your mattress anyway. The truck drove off, leaving me standing next to a disgusting, stained mattress blocking our entrance. Customers were already starting to stare and complain about the smell. I called the police, but they said since it technically was property she'd purchased from us, it was a civil matter. I had to pay a waste removal company $200 to haul it away immediately because it was affecting our business. But here's where it gets good. Unknown to Karen, we'd upgraded our security system last month. We now have cameras covering the entire front of the store, including the sidewalk. The footage clearly showed her directing the truck driver to dump the mattress, then standing there yelling about how it was our problem now. I posted the footage on our store's social media page with the caption, "When customers try to return mattresses after 6 weeks of use, then illegally dump them when we follow health code regulations." The video went viral locally within hours. Karen was easily recognizable, and people started sharing their own stories about encounters with her at other businesses. Turns out she had a reputation around town for making unreasonable demands and causing scenes. The local news even picked up the story. They interviewed me about the incident, and I explained our return policy and why we can't accept used mattresses for health reasons. The reporter tracked down Karen for comment, but she refused to talk to them. The best part came a week later. Karen showed up at the store again, this time with her husband. She was clearly embarrassed, avoiding eye contact and speaking quietly. Karen, I want to apologize for last week. I was having a bad day and I overreacted. Her husband looked mortified. He kept shaking his head and muttering apologies. Husband, we'll pay for the removal costs. This is so embarrassing. I appreciate the apology, but I'm afraid you're both banned from the store. We can't have customers who dump merchandise on our property. Karen, but I apologized. I said I was sorry. And I accept your apology. But actions have consequences. The ban is permanent. Her husband actually seemed relieved. He handed me cash for the removal costs and practically dragged her out of the store. The incident actually ended up being great for our business. The video showed that we stand behind our policies and won't be bullied by unreasonable customers. We got dozens of new customers who said they appreciated seeing a store that supports its employees. Karen tried to review bomb us online, but most people had already seen the video and knew the real story. The few negative reviews she left were quickly buried under positive ones from supporters. 6 months later, we still occasionally get people coming in asking if we're the mattress store from the video. It's become a weird badge of honor. We even made a joke sign for behind the counter that says, "No mattress dumping zone," with a little cartoon mattress. The funniest part is that Karen apparently tried the same stunt at a mattress store across town a few months later. But the owner there had seen our video and was ready for her. They called the police immediately when she showed up with another suspiciously stained mattress. Some people never learn, but at least now the whole town knows what they're dealing with when Karen walks into their business. Story 4. I've been working in human resources for about 8 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. I started as a junior recruiter right out of college, dealing with nervous candidates who forgot their resumes or showed up in flip-flops. Over the years, I worked my way up to become the head of talent acquisition at a mid-sized tech company. We're not exactly a household name, but we've got solid products and treat our employees well. Last month, I was handling interviews for a senior marketing position. It was a competitive role with good pay and benefits, so we were getting tons of applications. I had already screened about 50 candidates over the phone and narrowed it down to 15 people for in-person interviews. It was going to be a long week, but I was excited to find the right person for the team. The interviews were scheduled in our main conference room on the 3rd floor. It's nothing fancy, just a standard room with a long table, some chairs, and our company logo on the wall. I had my laptop set up with each candidate's resume and a list of questions I'd prepared. The format was simple, a 30-minute conversation to get to know them better, discuss their experience, and see if they'd be a good fit for our company culture. Tuesday morning started normally. My first interview was at 9, and the candidate was polite and well prepared. We had a good conversation about their previous marketing campaigns, and I made some notes about moving them to the next round. The second interview was at 10, and that person was equally professional. Then came the 11 o'clock slot. I was reviewing the next candidate's resume when I heard loud voices coming from the hallway. At first, I thought maybe someone was having a heated phone call, but the voices were getting closer to the conference room. I could hear a woman arguing with someone, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Suddenly, the conference room door burst open. A woman in her 40s stormed in, completely ignoring the fact that I was sitting there with papers spread across the table. She was wearing a bright red business suit that looked expensive, but somehow still seemed inappropriate for an interview. Her hair was styled in that "I want to speak to the manager" cut, and she had this determined look on her face like she was about to conquer the world. Behind her, I could see our receptionist looking panicked and trying to catch up. "Receptionist, ma'am, you can't just walk into meetings like this. You need to check in at the front desk first." The woman completely ignored her and marched straight up to where I was sitting. She looked around the room like she was inspecting it and clearly found it lacking. "Karen, this is ridiculous. Where's the chief executive officer? I'm here for the marketing position, and I need to speak to whoever's in charge of making real decisions around here." I was so shocked that it took me a moment to respond. I'd never had anyone just barge into an interview room before, let alone demand to speak to the chief executive officer right off the bat. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion. I'm the head of talent acquisition, and I'm conducting the first round interviews for the marketing position. Are you here for the 11 o'clock slot?" "Karen, first round interviews? Are you kidding me? Do you know who I am? I have 15 years of experience in marketing. I've managed campaigns for companies you've probably never even heard of. I shouldn't have to waste my time with some human resources person who probably doesn't even understand what real marketing looks like." I could feel my jaw dropping. I'd dealt with overconfident candidates before, but this was something else entirely. She was acting like she was doing us a favor by even showing up. "I understand you have extensive experience, and I'm looking forward to discussing it with you. That's exactly what this interview is for. If you'd like to take a seat, we can get started." "Karen, take a seat. I don't think you're understanding the situation here. I'm not here to answer your little questions about my greatest strengths and weaknesses. I'm here to be hired. I've already decided that I want this job, and frankly, You should be grateful that someone of my caliber is even considering working for a company like this." She gestured around the room dismissively, like our office was beneath her standards. "Karen, now, I need you to call the chief executive officer down here so we can discuss salary and start date. I assume you have his direct number." I was trying to process what was happening. This woman genuinely seemed to believe that she could just walk in and demand to be hired on the spot without going through any kind of interview process. I'm sorry, but that's not how our hiring process works. The chief executive officer doesn't get involved in individual interviews. We have a structured process that includes multiple rounds of interviews with different team members. If you're selected after this round, you'll meet with the marketing director and potentially other team members. Karen, your process is clearly flawed. I shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get a job that I'm obviously qualified for. This is exactly the kind of inefficient human resources nonsense that's holding companies back from hiring the best talent. She pulled out her phone and started typing something. "Karen, I'm going to leave a review about this company's terrible hiring practices. Maybe that will get someone's attention around here. Do you realize how much business you're probably losing because you can't recognize talent when it walks through your door?" At this point, I was getting annoyed. I pride myself on being professional, but this woman was being completely unreasonable. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you're not willing to participate in our interview process, then we can't move forward with your candidacy." "Karen, are you firing me from a job I don't even have yet? This is unbelievable. I want your name and your manager's name. I'm going to make sure everyone knows about this." She was practically shouting now, and I could see other employees starting to peek into the hallway to see what was going on. My name is on the interview confirmation email that was sent to you. Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily." "Karen, security? You're calling security on me?" All I did was try to have a reasonable conversation about employment. "This is discrimination, and I'm going to sue this company for everything it's worth." She stormed out of the room, still shouting about lawsuits and discrimination. I could hear her voice echoing down the hallway as she continued her tirade all the way to the elevator. The receptionist poked her head back into the room. "Receptionist, I'm so sorry about that. She just pushed past me when I tried to check her in. I called security, but she was already gone by the time they got to the lobby." I spent the next few minutes trying to compose myself and get ready for my next interview. I made some notes about what had happened and sent a quick email to my manager explaining the situation. I figured that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Later that afternoon, I got a call from our marketing director. Apparently, this woman had somehow found his direct email address and sent him a long message about how she'd been mistreated during her interview. She claimed that I was unprofessional and that the company was making a huge mistake by not hiring her immediately. The marketing director forwarded me the email, and it was even more ridiculous than her behavior in person. She'd written a whole paragraph about how she was going to revolutionize our marketing strategy and how we were missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She also mentioned that she was considering legal action for the way she'd been treated. I was worried that maybe I'd handled the situation wrong, but my manager and the marketing director both assured me that I'd done everything correctly. They said they'd never seen anything like it in their careers either. The story might have ended there, but the next morning, I got a call from a friend who works at another company in town. "Friend, did you see the LinkedIn post about your company?" I hadn't checked LinkedIn that morning, so I logged in to see what he was talking about. There it was, a long post from the woman who'd barged into my interview room the day before. She'd written several paragraphs about her terrible experience with our company and how we were unprofessional and discriminatory. But here's where it got interesting. She'd included details about her behavior that made it clear she was the problem, not us. She wrote about how she'd tried to speak directly to decision makers and how she'd refused to waste time with unnecessary interview questions. She even mentioned that she'd made it clear that she was ready to start immediately and that we should have recognized her value. What she didn't realize was that her post was actually making her look terrible. The comments section was filling up with people from our industry who were shocked by her behavior. Several people pointed out that demanding to speak to the chief executive officer during a first-round interview was completely inappropriate. Others shared their own stories about entitled candidates they'd encountered. The post started getting shared, and not in a good way for her. People were using it as an example of how not to behave in job interviews. Someone even created a screenshot and posted it in a professional development group with the caption, "Interview red flags to avoid." Within a few days, the post had hundreds of comments, and almost all of them were criticizing her behavior. People were pointing out that she'd essentially admitted to being rude to human resources staff, refusing to follow standard interview procedures, and making threats about legal action. The best part was that several people who knew her from previous jobs started sharing their own stories in the comments. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd behaved this way. One person mentioned that she'd been fired from her last job for similar behavior, and another person said she'd heard rumors about this woman being difficult to work with. The post ended up being shared in several professional groups, and it became a cautionary tale about interview behavior. Career coaches started using it as an example of how not to conduct yourself during the job search process. About a week later, I got an email from her trying to clarify her LinkedIn post. She said there had been some misunderstandings and that she'd like to restart the interview process. She even offered to delete her LinkedIn post if we'd consider her for the position. I showed the email to my manager, and we both agreed that we definitely didn't want to work with someone who would publicly trash a company before even getting through the interview process. We sent a polite but firm response saying that we'd moved forward with other candidates. The LinkedIn post stayed up for about 2 weeks before she finally deleted it, but by then, screenshots had been shared all over the place. I still see it pop up occasionally in professional groups as an example of interview horror stories. We ended up hiring someone else for the marketing position, a talented professional who went through our entire interview process without once demanding to speak to the chief executive officer. She's been doing great work for us, and I'm confident we made the right choice. The whole experience taught me that sometimes people really do create their own problems. This woman could have had a perfectly normal interview if she'd just followed basic professional etiquette. Instead, she turned what should have been a simple conversation into a viral example of how not to behave in the workplace. I've since added a note to our interview confirmation emails reminding candidates that they'll be meeting with human resources first, just in case anyone else has similar misconceptions about our process. So far, though, everyone else has been completely normal and professional. Sometimes I wonder if she ever realized that her own LinkedIn post was what really hurt her chances of getting hired anywhere in our industry. But knowing her attitude, she probably found a way to blame someone else for that too.